Where were you 10 years ago today? December the 6th, 2006. We remember it well here. We flicked on the switch at France 24. The world seen from Paris was the idea, in English, French, Arabic, perhaps soon in Spanish as well. Yes, we've aged, but have we matured? Well, that'll be for you to judge as we look back at the singular events that have brought us from there to here. Another perspective as we live the Obama years, the rise of China, the BRICS, the Arab Spring and its backlash, as well as the rise of a new sort of reaction to globalization with Brexit and the election of Donald Trump. How has the world changed? How has the way we report on it changed? To show we were serious about the web, we launched online 24 hours before broadcasting for the first time on television. But a tidy website, no longer enough. International news channels like ours have to think outside the box to reach audiences that now get their news from their phones or from social media. How we communicate is a big part of what's shaping our politics, with all the talk of fake news and who shouts loudest politics. How we report on the next 10 years, a crucial topic of conversation. France 24 turns 10. The France 24 debate turns 10. With us to talk about it from London, it's always a pleasure to speak with Abdel Bari Atwan, editor-in-chief of news website Rai Al-Youm. Your latest book, Islamic State, The Digital Caliphate. Welcome back.
Oh, pleasure to be here with you.
Sociologist Davina Frau Meggs teaches at the Sorbonne Nouvelle University. Thank you for joining us.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And Fabrice Epelboin, he teaches, I love it when they say this, information warfare at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you. From Washington, Ed OKeefe, he now covers Congress for the Washington Post. 10 years ago, around this very hour, Ed, do you remember what you were doing?
I was standing on a roof across from the White House and was told that I was the first live report from outside France for this for France 24, and that Jacques Chirac was watching, so don't mess up.
Do you remember what the report was about?
I think it was about the Iraq Study Group.
It was indeed.
The lawmakers and sort of Washington graybeards that had been assembled to look back at the mistakes made over the course of the Iraq War, and it had been released that morning, and you asked me to quickly dive into it and draw out some highlights and talk about what it might mean for the Bush administration, and we did, and then we were off and running.
It's amazing because we were 3 years out at the time from the invasion of Iraq, and already we were then drawing conclusions. We didn't realize that the backlash was far from over.
That's right. Americans and international forces engaged in Iraq and in Afghanistan, the two wars that were well underway at the point at which France 24 launched, France 24, and continue to play, a sort of lingering or constant role in American policy discussions, especially about our role in the world and how exactly they should continue to engage those parts of the world. It'll be curious to see what President Trump will do about both of those situations. He didn't say as much about Afghanistan back in the day as he did about Iraq, but certainly Iraq and the threat of ISIS will continue to be a main point of concern for the next president, no doubt.
Abdel Bari Atwan, when I say to you 2006, what for you is the sort of the seminal event or the event that has shaped the last 10 years?
Well, I believe, yes, first, congratulations. It is 10 years of success. It is really nice when I travel all over the world, and then here I can see you on the screen. So it was really, a fresh air and something completely different from the other channels which we get used to it. So congratulations, it's hard work and very, very successful. I believe at that time, I used to be your guest from time to time, which is my honor and my pleasure. Iraq and the Middle East in particular were on the top of the agenda. We used to talk about what will happen in that part of the world in particular. The situation was very tense in Iraq. The Iraqi model, as we were promised, it wasn't really a great model. It wasn't stable as we expected. Also, we were worried about the Palestinian questions. President Bush at that time promised that they will be independent Palestinian state. God told him so. We still believe that, whether this dream could happen or not. Also, we were waiting for the new American president in a way or another. So it was really very, very exciting time and very, very difficult time. And then even the last 10 years, we have again the Arab Spring, and Hosni Mubarak was in power in Egypt. So also Middle East was very, very stable in that time, except the Iraqi situation. Also, we talked a lot in this program and other programs when I used to be your guest about Al-Qaeda in that time, and Osama bin Laden, and where they are going to strike next time, and whether they are still seriously dangerous or not. So I think there were a lot on our plates in that time as a commentator, as a punter. So it was really, really great start, and we get used to this American channel, to the British channel in English. So it was nice to have a French channel, very professional, to actually give us something maybe more neutral, maybe more professional, maybe more frank than the others. So I really happy, to be associated with this station, with this channel, whether in person or from this studio in London.
All right. Well, thank you for the plaudits. Davina Fraumegs, we should be modest, though, because when you talk about being neutral or objective, part of the creation of this channel was a reaction to the fact that the news was only being given, the feeling in this country was that it was only being given by Anglo-Saxons. And the French aren't the only ones who've come up with this concept.
You mean having several channels in several languages?
Channels in several languages that broadcast internationally and that, try to see the perspective. And here, for us, the perspective is very much to see the world from Paris.
Right. Well, I think the French were innovative with France 24 because of the way they organize it in a sort of pluralistic manner and inviting very different kinds of guests as a result. I think the important part was renovating the whole bulk of experts that were usually called up. And you were able to do that compared to the more mainstream French media. And also, fairly soon, you were able to use the web. Because that's when happened what I call the social turn, 2005, 2006. We had YouTube, we had Twitter, we had Facebook, you had your observers, and you had a way of renovating not just the pluralistic debate, but bringing really very different sources from the bottom up.
And for you, what's been the marking political event of the last 10 years?
Ooh, there are several. If I think, I guess if I think globally, the end of globalization, the beginning of fragmentation of the world and regions, one China, one Russia, the BRICS, the problems with
so these strong nationalist figures that are emerging in all these countries.
Yes.
For you, that's the end of globalization.
Yes, it's a fragmentation of globalization. So it's not a decrease of it. It's just a sort of understanding of it that is less just sort of like a global, holistic approach, but on the contrary, more dislocated and preparing what is happening now in many ways. The rise of very nationalistic approaches, the breakup of traditional alliances. And it started then, at the end of the Bush era.
The fragmentation of the planet, do you agree with that, Fabrice Epelboin?
Yeah, I'm afraid we built this globalization on a lie, and the lie is just appearing as a lie to everybody.
What do you mean it's a lie?
I think
we all communicate around the world much faster. We all speak to one another much faster.
And
news that Abdel Bari is talking about, it travels the globe and at the speed of light.
So does WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks has revealed those last 10 years, lots of lies and lots of things that the general public wasn't supposed to know. From simple details like multinational corporations do not pay tax in Europe or elsewhere, and to very intimate details of how politics are done. And this has destroyed optimistic approach to globalization. It's obviously not that nice, and people now can have access to information and can know exactly what's happening and make their own opinion instead of adopting the opinions given to them by media. It's a very different world, very, very different world. People can access any kind of information, and in many countries, people have access to some sort of freedom of speech, which was before that a purely Anglo-Saxon concept. We didn't have any freedom of expression in France. We have more than 200 laws restricting freedom of expression.
But you can find out the news where it is.
Before the internet, no. It was extremely difficult. As a teacher in a high-end school, yes, of course I could if I had enough time on my hands. But now anybody can do a search in Google and find some bits and parts of news and find his truth and his vision of what's going on in the world.
Abdel Bari Atwan, when the Arab Spring happens, people said, this is great, it's the leaderless revolution, you can get information out quickly, you can organize a rally fast, the truth, the more openness, the better, the more the truth gets out there, the better. Is the Arab world more open than it was 10 years ago?
Well, it is more depressing, to be honest. When the Arab Spring started 5 years or 5.5 years ago, we were extremely optimistic, extremely happy that at last the Middle East will be changed and changed for the better. But when you look at the Middle East now, it is awful, honestly. A war in Syria, failed state in Libya, failed state in Yemen, Islamic State emerging, Al-Qaeda is still there. But
on the specific point, Abdel Bari, is there more free speech? Do people speak their mind more?
To be honest, yes, but this is not because of the Arab Spring. It is because of the revolution of the social media. We have to admit that this social media changed the Middle East completely. Now the people who were oppressed and who were actually under dictatorship, they could not express their point of view. They could not actually reach the right information about their own country. But because, thank God, because of the social media, the situation is completely different. Now people can access to the internet, to Twitter, to Facebook, and they interact with other people. There is a huge revolution now in the Middle East. Honestly, the government, which very, very autocratic government, they cannot control the people. They cannot control the freedom of expression as they used to do in the past with the traditional media. Yes, now people communicating much better. Now they are actually using these gadgets freely. It is true there are some restrictions, especially in countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, some in the middle, also other Gulf states. But despite that, they have the programs, they have actually the apps which they can actually overrun this kind of censorship, or they can actually challenge this censorship, and they can reach the information the way they want. So it is a challenge. It is a changing place in the Middle East. Okay, there are a lot of wars. Okay, there are a lot of casualties. Okay, we have a lot of problems, economic problems. Now, okay, we have also the drop in the oil prices. But despite that, people, I believe people actually have more freedom than what they used to have, say, 10 years or 20 years ago. This is thank God because of the revolution, as I said, the mass media, the social media revolutions, which is highly appreciated in our part of the world, where the government, they used actually to tell us what to say, what to hear, what to know. Now we don't have the government to tell us what to do. Now we can go directly to the source of the information and get it right, and also use it or actually retweet it on our Twitters or on our Facebook. So thank God for this revolution.
All right, I want to get the reaction of Ed OKeefe to that and to the remark Fabrice Epelboin made earlier about how the big lies of capitalism or of globalization, you said, have
roughly the same,
have been exposed. Now, Ed, you covered the presidential election campaign. You were covering Marco Rubio, who was a traditional candidate. Did you see this coming, this upending of politics as usual?
Well, I think we saw it in the States begin to sort of, we could see the waves out there, if you will, offshore, maybe now 6 years ago, when the so-called Tea Party movement really was swept into Congress and really revamped the way that Congress worked at the time, Republicans in Congress at least. The idea that something about the Obama administration had sparked this great anger and concern in so many people that a new kind of Republican lawmaker who was much more focused on the concerns of his constituents was communicating with them much more frequently through social media and frankly probably to the detriment of the institution, doing so in a more caustic and combative way, which we've now seen adopted by both parties. That should have been a bigger signal to us that it was coming, perhaps because it didn't really rear its head during the 2012 election when President Obama was reelected. Maybe people started to discount it, but those feelings were still there. They festered. And we started to see it, of course, also when Bernie Sanders ran against Hillary Clinton and enjoyed widespread support, especially among younger people and minorities and those in the urban centers who were concerned about globalism, about capitalism, about all those other issues. So in hindsight, perhaps we should have remembered that those feelings were there and were going to somehow play out as they have in our presidential election here. But you're right, Trump upended the paths of 16 other Republican opponents. I'd say 12 of those really come out of the more traditional mold of a politician in the United States, someone who had served in elected office before, who pretty much adhered to Republican orthodoxy and was believing that they were the most qualified. Well, of course, ultimately Trump prevailed. But I think we're going to have to wait and see because so much about Trump we still don't know, how he's going to govern and really what he thinks about the world and about his own personal political ideology. We're going to have to wait and see whether...
We're going to have to wait and see. Ed, I'm going to interrupt you very briefly because we have to take a quick break. But when we come back, I will be asking you whether he's a one-off, a flash in the pan, or if this is the shape of politics to come. You're watching the France 24 debate.